Tyler Morrison signed the divorce papers with a gold pen his mistress bought him, his hand trembling not from doubt but from excitement as he prepared to marry Vanessa Hayes, his wife's best friend since college, completely unaware that the woman he was abandoning, Elena Whitmore, was the billionaire CEO of Whitmore Industries, who had secretly paid every single medical bill that saved his dying mother's life 3 years ago. The ink hadn't even dried when Vanessa leaned across the mahogany table in their family lawyer's office and spat directly into Elena's face, the glob of saliva sliding down her former friend's porcelain cheek as Elena remained perfectly still, her emerald eyes betraying nothing of the empire she controlled or the devastating truth she was about to unleash. What Elena did next didn't just crush Tyler, it humbled him in ways that would haunt every breath he took for the rest of his life. But how could a man who thought he knew everything about his wife of 8 years be so catastrophically wrong about who she really was? And why would a billionaire CEO hide her identity from the man she loved enough to save his entire family? What truth was Elena protecting that was so dangerous it required her to live as an ordinary woman? And what revenge would a woman of unlimited power devise when betrayed by both her husband and her best friend? Elena Whitmore had perfected the art of being invisible. For 8 years, she'd played the role of a struggling freelance graphic designer, working from their modest 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Boston. She'd clipped coupons, shopped at discount stores, and never once let Tyler Morrison, the man she'd married in a courthouse ceremony with only 2 witnesses, suspect that she controlled a $15 billion empire from the shadows. The irony wasn't lost on her. Every morning, while Tyler left for his job as a regional sales manager at a pharmaceutical company, Elena would wait exactly 17 minutes before transforming into her true self. The reclusive CEO of Whitmore Industries, a conglomerate that owned everything from medical technology firms to real estate holdings across 43 countries. She'd inherited the company at 23 when her parents died in a plane crash, but the inheritance came with a curse. 3 kidnapping attempts in her first year as CEO had taught Elena that visibility meant vulnerability. So she'd done what any brilliant strategist would do. She'd disappeared into plain sight, hiring a professional actress to play her role in public, while she ran the empire through encrypted channels and trusted intermediaries. Meeting Tyler at a coffee shop 9 years ago had been the first genuine moment of her adult life. He didn't know who she was, couldn't know. Didn't see dollar signs or opportunity, just a woman with paint-stained fingers sketching in a corner booth. For the first time since her parents' death, someone had wanted Elena for herself, not for what she represented or what she could provide. She'd fallen catastrophically in love with that freedom. The lies had started small. A modest apartment instead of her penthouse, a carefully constructed budget instead of unlimited resources, and when Tyler's mother, Patricia Morrison, had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 3 years into their marriage, Elena had faced her greatest test. The experimental treatment Patricia needed cost $847,000, a sum that would have bankrupted Tyler's entire family, even if they'd mortgaged everything they owned. Elena had written the check anonymously through one of her foundation's shell programs, listing the payment as a medical research grant. She'd held Tyler as he'd sobbed with relief, had listened as he'd thanked God and fate and random chance for the miracle that had saved his mother's life. She'd bitten her tongue and swallowed the truth because revealing it would have meant revealing everything and losing the only authentic relationship she'd ever known. But she'd made one catastrophic mistake in her carefully constructed facade. She'd introduced Tyler to Vanessa Hayes. Vanessa Hayes had been Elena's college roommate at Stanford, one of the few people who'd known her before the inheritance, before the empire, before everything changed. They'd bonded over late-night study sessions and shared dreams of changing the world. When Elena had disappeared into her secret life, Vanessa had been her anchor to normalcy, the friend who'd promised to keep her secrets and protect her privacy. That promise had lasted almost 7 years. Looking back, Elena could pinpoint the exact moment things shifted. It was 14 months ago at Patricia Morrison's cancer-free celebration dinner. Tyler had been animated, grateful, talking about how blessed they were. His hand had been on Elena's knee under the table. His mother had been crying happy tears. and Vanessa's eyes had been calculating. Elena had caught her staring at Tyler with an expression she'd never seen before. Hungry, assessing, wanting. It had been there and gone in a flash. So quick Elena had convinced herself she'd imagined it. But some part of her ancient survival instincts, the same instincts that had kept her alive through kidnapping attempts and corporate warfare, had started screaming warnings she'd chosen to ignore. Because Vanessa was her best friend, because Tyler loved her, because surely the two people she trusted most in this world wouldn't. The first text message had appeared on Tyler's phone 6 weeks after that dinner. Elena had been making coffee when his phone lit up on the counter. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. The sender, Vanessa Hayes. Elena's hands had frozen mid-pour, coffee streaming past her cup onto the granite counter. Her brain had performed complicated gymnastics, trying to rationalize, trying to explain. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was about something innocent. Maybe Tyler had emerged from the shower, seen his phone, and his entire face had transformed into an expression Elena had never witnessed in 8 years of marriage. Panic mixed with guilty pleasure. "Who's that?" Elena had asked, her voice steady despite the earthquake in her chest. "Just work stuff," he'd lied, pocketing the phone too quickly, kissing her cheek with lips that now felt like betrayal against her skin. That had been the beginning of the end, though Elena hadn't known it yet. Over the following months, Elena had watched her marriage disintegrate with the same analytical precision she used to dismantle competitors in the boardroom. She'd seen the patterns. Tyler's late nights at work, the new cologne, the way he'd stopped touching her with any real presence, as if his body was there, but his mind was already gone. She'd tracked Vanessa's growing distance, the canceled plans, the strange new tension whenever the three of them were together. Elena could have hired investigators, could have had both of them followed, could have used her unlimited resources to confirm what her heart already knew. But some wounded part of her had needed to see if Tyler would come clean on his own. Needed to believe that the man she'd loved enough to hide her entire identity for would somehow choose her in the end. He hadn't. 6 months ago, Tyler had sat her down in their living room, the same room where they'd made love on the couch, where they'd discussed baby names they both liked, where he'd once told her she was his entire world, and asked for a divorce. "I've fallen in love with someone else," he'd said, and Elena had noticed he couldn't quite meet her eyes. "I never meant for it to happen, but I can't keep lying to you. I can't keep pretending." "Who is it?" Elena had asked, even though she knew. "Vanessa." 2 syllables that rewrote Elena's entire understanding of loyalty and trust. "How long?" Elena's voice had been remarkably steady. 4 months. Another lie. Elena knew it had been closer to 10. "Does she know you're asking me for a divorce?" Tyler had nodded. "She's waiting for me. At her apartment. We want to do this right. We don't want to sneak around anymore." The almost laugh that had escaped Elena's throat had made Tyler flinch. They'd been sneaking around for months, probably longer, and now they wanted to do things right. "Okay," Elena had said quietly. Tyler had blinked. "Okay? I'll give you the divorce. No contest. You can have whatever you want." Relief had flooded his face, so complete and overwhelming that Elena had felt something fundamental break inside her chest. He'd actually looked happy, ecstatic even, that she wasn't going to fight for their marriage. "There's one condition," Elena had added. "Anything. I want to be there when you sign the papers. I want to see you both. Together. I need closure." Tyler had agreed immediately, probably thinking she wanted some dramatic final confrontation she could process and move past. He hadn't understood that Elena Whitmore didn't need closure. She needed to witness the moment when 2 people who'd betrayed her revealed exactly who they really were. The meeting had been scheduled at Martin Chen's law office, a neutral location downtown. Elena had arrived early, wearing a simple black dress that cost $47 from a department store clearance rack, the kind of dress a struggling graphic designer might wear to her divorce. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail. No jewelry except her wedding ring, which she'd carefully kept on. Martin Chen was one of the few people who knew her real identity, hired secretly years ago to handle her personal legal matters separately from her corporate ones. When she'd entered his office, he'd given her a long, searching look. Mrs. Whitmore, he'd said carefully, you're certain about this approach? Completely. I've prepared the additional documents you requested. They're in the folder marked supplemental materials. But I need to tell you what your planning is. Exactly what they deserve, Elena had finished. Tyler had arrived 20 minutes later with Vanessa on his arm, both of them wearing expressions of barely contained joy. They'd tried to hide it, tried to look appropriately somber, but Elena could see the excitement vibrating beneath their skin. They were getting what they wanted, finally. The divorce papers had been simple. Tyler got the apartment, which Elena owned outright through a shell corporation, though he didn't know that. He got the car, which she'd paid off years ago. He got to walk away from 8 years of marriage with his freedom and his new love, and absolutely no consequences for his betrayal. Elena got nothing except the liberation of truth. Martin had walked them through the documents with professional efficiency. Tyler had signed first, his hand, as it turned out, trembling slightly as he used the gold pen Vanessa had given him for his last birthday. The pen had cost $800, Elena happened to know, because she'd seen the charge on Vanessa's credit card statement during a routine security check her people ran on everyone in her inner circle. Then it had been Elena's turn. She'd picked up the pen slowly, letting the moment stretch. Vanessa had been practically vibrating with anticipation, her perfectly manicured fingers clutching Tyler's arm. And that's when Elena had seen it, the flash of vicious triumph in her former best friend's eyes. Elena had set the pen down. Before I sign, she'd said quietly, I have something I need to say. Tyler had shifted uncomfortably. Elena, please don't make this harder. Do you remember? Elena had interrupted, her voice soft as silk. 3 years ago, when your mother got sick. Tyler's face had clouded with confusion. What does that have to... Do you remember telling me that the treatment cost $847,000? That you'd called every bank, every lending institution, every distant relative you had? That you'd been turned down for every loan because you didn't have the collateral? Elena, Vanessa had interjected, her voice sharp, this is inappropriate. And do you remember, Elena continued, her eyes locked on Tyler's face, the miracle, the medical foundation that appeared out of nowhere and paid for everything? The research grant that saved Patricia's life? Tyler had gone very still. Yes. Have you ever wondered, Elena asked, who donated to that foundation? Who created it? Who wrote that specific check with your mother's name on it? The silence in the room had become suffocating. Martin Chen had slowly pushed a manila folder across the table toward Tyler. What is this? Tyler's voice had cracked. Open it, Elena had said. With shaking hands, Tyler had opened the folder. Inside were documents. The original check for $847,000, made out from an account under Elena's name. Bank statements showing transfers from Whitmore Industries to the medical foundation. Board minutes from the foundation's emergency meeting where Elena Whitmore, listed as founder and primary donor, had personally approved Patricia Morrison's treatment. I don't understand, Tyler had whispered. Keep reading, Elena had said. More documents. Property deeds showing Elena owned their apartment building. Pay stubs from Tyler's pharmaceutical company, which was a subsidiary of Whitmore Industries. The title to the car he drove, purchased by a Whitmore Industries shell corporation and gifted to him through a carefully constructed prize promotion he'd won 3 years ago. What is this? Tyler had asked again, but his voice was different now, smaller, uncertain. The truth, Elena had said simply. My name is Elena Whitmore. I'm the CEO of Whitmore Industries. I have been for 11 years. I'm worth approximately $15 billion, give or take a few hundred million depending on the stock market. I've been your wife for 8 years, and 3 years ago, when your mother was dying, I used my resources to save her life. The color had drained from Tyler's face. That's not possible, Vanessa had said, but her voice was weak. Elena's a graphic designer. She lives in a 2-bedroom apartment. She clips coupons. I do clip coupons, Elena had agreed. I find them calming, but I don't need to. I just enjoyed pretending to be normal. I enjoyed being loved for who I am instead of what I'm worth. Tyler had stood abruptly, the chair scraping against hardwood. No, No, this is some kind of... You're lying. You're making this up. Martin had pushed another folder across the table. Financial statements from the past 8 years. Every anonymous gift, every mysterious promotion, every lucky break Mr. Morrison experienced during your marriage. All traceable back to your wife's various holdings and foundations. Tyler had grabbed the documents with shaking hands, his eyes scanning rapidly, his face transforming from confusion to horror to comprehension. Why? He'd finally asked. Why would you hide this? Because I wanted you to love me, Elena had said simply. Not my money, not my power, just me. And for a while you did. Vanessa had been staring at Elena as if seeing a ghost. All those times we complained about bills together, when you said you were struggling to make rent, when you borrowed money from me, I paid you back, Elena had pointed out, with interest technically, though I don't think you realize that. You lied to me. Vanessa's voice was rising. You've been lying this entire time. What kind of friend sleeps with her best friend's husband? Elena had countered, and her voice had been quiet but sharp enough to draw blood. Vanessa's face had flushed red, but instead of shame or remorse, Elena had watched rage flash across her former friend's features. The rage of someone who'd been caught, who'd thought she was getting away with something, and who now realized she'd been playing chess against a grandmaster while thinking it was checkers. That's when Vanessa had leaned forward, her face twisted with hatred, and spat directly in Elena's face. The glob of saliva had hit Elena's left cheek, sliding slowly down toward her jaw. The room had frozen. Even Martin Chen had inhaled sharply. Elena hadn't moved, hadn't flinched. She simply sat there, letting the spit slide down her face, her emerald eyes fixed on Vanessa with an expression of such complete calm that it was somehow more terrifying than any anger could have been. Feel better? Elena had asked quietly. Then she'd reached into her briefcase and pulled out a tablet. With 2 taps, she'd pulled up a video and turned it to face Tyler and Vanessa. The video showed a hospital room. Patricia Morrison lay in a bed, weak but alive, 18 months post-treatment. The date stamp in the corner was from 6 weeks ago. In the video, Patricia was talking to someone off camera. I don't know how to thank you enough for what you did, for saving my life. Tyler doesn't know, does he, that it was you? Elena's voice off camera. No, and I'd prefer to keep it that way. Patricia. But why? Why would you save me and not tell your own husband? Elena's voice. Because the moment he knows what I'm worth, everything changes. I've seen it happen before. I just wanted to be his wife. Just Elena. Not Elena Whitmore, the billionaire. Just me. Patricia crying now. He's lucky to have you. I hope he knows that. Elena's voice soft and sad. I hope so too. Elena had paused the video and looked at Tyler, whose face had gone completely white. I visited your mother every week during her recovery, Elena had said. We became close. She's a beautiful person, Tyler. You should be proud to be her son. Mom knew? Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. All this time, Mom knew? I asked her not to tell you. I wanted you to love me for me, not for what I could provide. Elena had finally reached up and wiped the spit from her face with a tissue. But then you fell in love with Vanessa, and I realized something important. She'd stood, picking up her briefcase. I realized that the man I loved, the man I thought I married, never really existed, because the real Tyler Morrison, when given the choice between integrity and desire, chose desire. When given the choice between the woman who saved his mother's life and the woman who made him feel excited, he chose excitement. And that tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. Elena, wait. Tyler had started, but Elena had held up her hand. I'm not finished. Martin has prepared several additional documents for you to review. First, you'll find that the apartment you think you're getting in the divorce is actually owned by one of my corporations. I'm terminating the lease. You have 30 days to vacate. Tyler had made a choking sound. Second, your job at Morrison Pharmaceutical, which is a subsidiary of my company, is being eliminated due to corporate restructuring. You'll receive 6 months severance, which is generous considering the circumstances. You're firing me? Tyler's voice had been barely audible. I'm eliminating your position, Elena had corrected. There's a difference. Third, the car you drove here is technically owned by one of my shell companies. I'll need the keys." Tyler had looked at the keys in his hand as if they might burn him. Fourth, and finally, Elena had turned to Vanessa, who'd been sitting in the stunned silence. "I know about the boutique marketing firm you've been planning to start. The one you've been developing using information you gathered from our conversations about business strategy. The one you were going to fund with Tyler's divorce settlement from me." Vanessa's eyes had gone wide. "I've purchased the digital domain names you wanted. I've secured the office spaces you were looking at. And I've hired away the 3 key people you'd lined up for your leadership team, offered them better positions with my companies. Your business plan is dead before it started. You can't do this," Vanessa had whispered. "You can't just—" "I can do whatever I want," Elena had said. And for the first time, her voice had carried the full weight of the power she'd been hiding for 8 years. "I'm a billionaire CEO, Vanessa. You helped yourself to my husband. Did you really think I'd let you help yourself to my business strategies too?" Elena had walked to the door, then paused. "Oh, and Tyler, your mother doesn't know about the affair yet. I'll let you be the one to tell Patricia that you divorced the woman who saved her life so you could marry her best friend. I imagine that conversation will be enlightening." "Please," Tyler had finally broken, tears streaming down his face. "Please, Elena, I made a mistake. I didn't know. I didn't understand." "No," Elena had agreed. "You didn't. But that's the thing about betrayal, Tyler. It doesn't require understanding. It just requires choice. And you made yours." She'd looked at him, really looked at him, this man she'd loved enough to hide her entire identity for. This man who'd thrown away 8 years of marriage without ever realizing he'd been married to someone who could have given him everything, but had chosen instead to simply love him. "You divorced your wife to marry her best friend," Elena had said quietly, her hand on the door handle. "You were unaware that she was the billionaire CEO who saved your entire family. And what she did, what I did, was give you exactly what you asked for. Freedom. From me, from our marriage, from any obligation to the woman who loved you enough to be poor for you." She'd opened the door. "But I want you to understand something, Tyler. Every day for the rest of your life, when you wake up next to Vanessa, you'll remember that you traded the woman who saved your mother's life for the woman who spat in her face. You'll remember that you had someone who loved you so completely, she hid her entire identity just to be authentic with you, and you threw it away for an affair." Elena had stepped through the doorway, then delivered her final words. "I don't need to crush you, Tyler. You'll crush yourself every single day for the rest of your life. That's not revenge. That's just consequences. And consequences, unlike me, will never divorce you." 6 months later, Tyler Morrison sat in his mother's kitchen, watching her make tea with the careful movements of someone who'd survived death and learned to cherish every simple gesture. "You're miserable," Patricia said, setting a cup in front of him. Tyler couldn't deny it. The apartment he'd rented after being evicted from the building Elena owned was a 1-bedroom in a rough neighborhood. The job he'd found paid half what he'd made before, and he'd had to lie on his resume because he couldn't explain why his position at Morrison Pharmaceutical had been eliminated. Vanessa had moved in with him, but the excitement that had seemed so electric during their affair had curdled into resentment now that they were living in poverty together. Vanessa blamed him, Tyler blamed himself, and Patricia had barely spoken to either of them since the truth came out. "Mom," Tyler said quietly, "I need to tell you something." "About Elena," Patricia said. "It wasn't a question. You knew? She called me the day of your divorce, told me everything." Patricia sat down heavily. "Tyler, I need you to understand something. When I was dying, when everyone else had given up, Elena saved my life. Not because she wanted credit, not because she wanted gratitude, but because she loved you so much that your pain was her pain." Tyler felt tears burning his eyes. "And you threw her away," Patricia continued, her voice breaking. "You threw away a woman who loved you enough to hide who she was, who wanted you to love her, not her money. Do you understand how rare that is? How precious?" "I know." Tyler's voice cracked. "Mom, I know. I didn't realize." "No," Patricia agreed. You didn't. And now you're living with the consequences of that ignorance. Tyler had been following Elena's life from a distance, the way someone might watch a car crash they'd caused. She'd stopped hiding. The actress who'd been playing her in public had been retired, and Elena Whitmore had stepped into her full identity. She'd appeared on the cover of Forbes. She'd given a TED Talk about hiding in plain sight and the price of authenticity. She'd started a foundation specifically for cancer treatment named after Patricia, the Morrison Medical Fund, which had already saved hundreds of lives. And she'd never once mentioned Tyler or Vanessa, had never publicly acknowledged the betrayal, had simply moved forward, brilliant and powerful and completely out of his reach. What do I do? Tyler asked his mother. You live with it, Patricia said simply. You wake up every day and you look at what you chose. And maybe someday you become the man Elena thought you were when she married you. But that man? He's gone, Tyler. You killed him when you chose excitement over integrity. Tyler sat in his mother's kitchen and felt the full weight of what Elena had said that day in the lawyer's office. She didn't need to crush him. He was crushing himself every single day. Every memory of her quiet sacrifice, every recollection of the lies he told to sneak off with Vanessa. Every moment he'd spent thinking he was so clever, so entitled to his affair. All of it was poison now, eating him from the inside out. Vanessa had already started looking at other men. Tyler could see it. The same calculating look she'd once directed at him, now aimed at someone with better prospects. History, it seemed, was preparing to repeat itself. And Elena Whitmore, the woman he'd divorced, the woman he'd never really known, the woman who'd saved his entire family while asking for nothing but his love, was out there somewhere, living the life she'd always deserved to live. Without him, that was the real punishment, Tyler realized. Not the lost apartment or the lost job or the lost money. The real punishment was knowing, with absolute certainty, that he'd held something precious in his hands, and he'd been too blind to see its value until it was gone. Elena hadn't crushed him. She'd simply stepped aside and let him see himself clearly for the first time in his life. And that truth, that humbling, devastating truth, was something Tyler Morrison would carry with him for every remaining day of his existence. Not as revenge, just as the natural consequence of throwing away the one person who'd loved him enough to be ordinary for him. The billionaire CEO who'd saved his entire family had given him exactly what he'd asked for: a divorce, his freedom, and the rest of his life to regret both. That, Tyler understood now, was mercy and punishment wrapped into one inescapable truth. He'd divorced his wife to marry her best friend, unaware she was the billionaire CEO who saved his entire family. And what she did, what Elena Whitmore did, crushed him and humbled him in ways that would echo through every empty day that followed. Some mistakes, Tyler had learned, don't destroy you in a moment. They destroy you slowly, over a lifetime, one regret at a time.